Welcome to the channel where humanity takes on the galaxy. Subscribe for weekly HFY and sci-fi tales. The Galactic Combat Academy's training hall gleamed under the cold light of alien suns. Banners of 100 species hanging from steel arches overhead. Today's lesson had been whispered about for weeks, spreading through dormitories and mess halls like wildfire. How to defeat a human. Rows of cadets, crystalline beings, whose bodies refracted light into rainbow patterns. Reptilian warriors with scales that could deflect plasma fire. Amphibious soldiers who could regenerate lost limbs all leaned forward in anticipation. Their insectoid instructor, Commander Krell, armored in gleaming black chitin that had survived 3 wars, strutted across the polished floor with the confidence of someone who had never truly been challenged. He gestured with one of his 4 arms toward the lone human standing silently at the center of the combat ring. A volunteer brought in specifically for this demonstration. The human was supposedly harmless, a civilian contractor who maintained the Academy's atmospheric systems. Laughter echoed through the hall, mockery from a dozen different species, each sound uniquely alien, yet universally contemptuous. Observe the fragile mammal, Krell sneered, his mandibles clicking with amusement. Soft flesh that tears like paper. Slow reflexes, compared to proper warriors. Brittle bones that snap under pressure. Easily broken, easily defeated. The instructor raised his primary training staff, its surface shimmering with contained kinetic energy that could stun without killing. Perfect for demonstrations. First rule of engagement: strike at the limbs, to disable them before they can mount any defense. Second rule: target the torso, where their vital organs cluster vulnerably. Third rule: never give them time to think, because thought is their only advantage. The cadets leaned closer, dozens of recording devices capturing every moment on shimmering holoscreens that would be studied in tactical classes for months to come. But the human remained utterly calm, hands relaxed at his sides, chest rising and falling with steady breaths. His eyes, those strange forward-facing predator eyes, locked onto the instructor with an unnerving stillness that none of the watching aliens recognized as dangerous. They should have seen. They do not even resist intimidation properly, Krell declared, beginning to circle the human like a hunter stalking wounded prey. Mammals freeze before superior predators. It is encoded in their primitive neural pathways. They cannot help themselves. He raised the staff high, preparing a textbook downward strike that would force the human to his knees. The cadets held their breath. Then everything changed. In a blur of motion that shouldn't have been possible for a species classified as medium-tier physical capabilities, the human moved, not away, but forward and to the side, his body flowing like water around the descending staff. His hand, those 5-fingered manipulators the aliens had dismissed as clumsy, shot out and seized the weapon. Mid-swing, with a grip that stopped its momentum completely, Krell's compound eyes widened in genuine shock. He tried to wrench the staff free, putting his full strength behind it, strength that had crushed stronger beings. The human didn't budge. Instead, with a sharp twist that incorporated his entire body, shoulders, hips, legs, working in biomechanical harmony that looked almost choreographed, he reversed the staff's direction. There was a sound that would haunt the cadets' dreams for years afterward, a wet, splintering crack as Commander Krell's arm bent backward at an angle that violated every principle of arthropod anatomy. Shards of black chitin scattered across the polished floor like dark confetti, and the instructor's shrieker, high-pitched keening that their species only made in mortal agony, pierced the training hall's acoustics. The hall went silent, except for that terrible screaming. No laughter, no mockery, no confident whispers. The human released the staff, letting it clatter to the ground, and stepped back with his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. But there was nothing non-threatening about him anymore. His voice, when he spoke, cut through the silence like a blade through silk. Lesson 1: don't underestimate prey that learned to fight predators bigger, faster, and stronger than you for millions of years. We didn't survive by being easy to kill. The cadets froze, their various sensory organs all locked onto this creature they had been taught to consider weak, fragile, beneath notice. Some of the younger ones trembled. Others felt something they'd never experienced before. The ancient, primal understanding that they were in the presence of something that could end them. Medical drones swarmed from hidden alcoves, their anti-grav units whining as they lifted the shrieking Commander Krell away toward the infirmary. His arm dangled uselessly, green ichor leaking from the compound fracture. The cadets erupted into furious whispers. That was impossible. No human should have that kind of speed. The intelligence report said. A reptilian student hissed to her neighbor, He broke the commander with one move. 1. ZH Krell survived the siege of Krelthar. Another added, voice shaking. The human wasn't even breathing hard. Like it cost him nothing. But the human himself didn't move from his position in the center of the ring. He didn't boast, didn't smile, didn't perform any of the dominance displays they'd expect from a victor. He simply stood there, his stillness somehow more terrifying than any aggressive posturing could have been. His chest rose and fell with the same steady rhythm as before. His eyes scanned the crowd calmly, evaluating, calculating. For the first time in their lives, the cadets realized this was no anomaly, no freak accident, no lucky strike. This was normal for humanity. This was what they were, in a shadowed observation balcony, high above the training floor. Where the Academy's senior commanders watched all demonstrations, several figures stood frozen in shock. Their earlier amusement had evaporated like water on hot stone, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. If one human civilian can do that to Krell, muttered General Vexter, his scales rippling with involuntary fear responses, what happens when they fight as armies? When they bring weapons designed by that kind of thinking? Admiral Koresh, her crystalline form refracting the harsh lights into anxious patterns, tapped notes into her datapad with trembling manipulators. We must revise our combat doctrine immediately. Every assumption we've made about humanity may be fundamentally wrong. Their classification as Category 3 threat level is laughably inadequate. Below them, the cadets still stared at the human who had just rewritten their understanding of power, violence, and the galaxy's pecking order. Commander de Krell had been their example of martial excellence, a decorated veteran, an instructor who had trained champions. The human had dismantled him as casually as one might break a twig. A brave or foolish cadet finally stepped forward, her voice barely steady. She was Keltherin, a species known for their combat prowess and warrior culture. How did you move that fast? Our sensors showed nothing unusual about your musculature. Your reaction speed, you're the human, turned those predator eyes on her. And she almost stepped back. Almost. Your sensors measured me at rest, he said quietly. They measured me when I wasn't threatened. You want to know what makes humans different? He paused, and every being in that hole leaned forward, despite their fear. Your galaxy's predators hunt for food. It's practical, efficient, nothing personal. But Earth's predators. His expression hardened. They hunted us for survival. For millions of years, we were prey. Not the fastest, not the strongest, not the most armored. Just clever apes trying not to be eaten by things that could kill us 100 different ways. Another cadet. This one, amphibious, with skin that shifted colors with emotion currently showing distressed yellow patterns, raised a webbed hand. But you're not prey now. What changed? The human's laugh was without humor. We stopped running. We learned that the best defense is violence of action. We discovered that pain is temporary, but victory is survival. We developed weapons, tactics, strategies. We studied our predators until we understood them better than they understood themselves. Then we hunted them back. He looked around at the faces, some horrified, some fascinated, all afraid. Do you know what happened to the great cats that stalked our ancestors? The wolves that picked off our young, the bears that raided our camps? Silence. We turned them into pets and stories. We didn't just survive them. We dominated them so completely they became legends we tell children at bedtime. A senior cadet, Veranak, a massive being who stood nearly 3 meters tall, with muscles like corded steel, stepped into the ring. You got lucky with ZH Krell. He was old, past his prime. Fight someone in their peak. The human's expression didn't change. If you want, what followed would be analyzed in military academies across the galaxy for generations. Veranak charged with a roar that shook the walls, moving with speed that should have been impossible for something his size. The human didn't run, didn't dodge dramatically. He waited, almost casually, until the last possible microsecond. Then he dropped low, lower than Vornak expected anyone to go, and struck upward with his palm at a joint in the alien's knee. Another crack, not as dramatic as ZH Krell's arm, but Vornak crashed to the ground, howling. The human had moved away before the body even finished falling. Your species evolved on a low-gravity world, the human said calmly. Your joints are optimized for strength but not lateral stress. I could see that from your stance. He looked at the shocked cadets. That's another human advantage. We study, we learn, we adapt. It's not about being the strongest, it's about finding the weakness and exploiting it without mercy. 3 more cadets tried, one after another. The crystalline warrior whose body could refract energy weapons found herself flipped onto her back. her center of gravity, betrayed by the human's understanding of physics. The aerial fighter, whose wings could generate hurricane-force winds, was grounded when the human ducked inside his range and struck pressure points that paralyzed his flight muscles. The armored behemoth, whose carapace could withstand anti-tank rounds, discovered that joints are universal vulnerabilities when the human dislocated his shoulder with a twisting lock that used the alien's own strength against him. Each time, the human remained calm, efficient, almost surgical in his violence. No wasted motion, no unnecessary force. Just precise application of technique to vulnerable biology. The cadets began to understand something their instructors had never taught them. Humans had spent their entire evolution learning to kill things that should have been impossible to kill. It wasn't special to them. It was Tuesday. In the observation deck, emergency meetings were already being called. "We need to classify this as a galactic security issue," someone was saying. "If humans can do this in individual combat, imagine their potential in warfare, in tactics." But General Vexter shook his head slowly. Too late. We invited them into the galactic community. We gave them access to our technology, our star charts, our trade routes. We thought they would be useful worker species, clever enough to be valuable, but weak enough to be controlled. He turned away from the window. We were fools. Back in the training hall, the human finally spoke again, addressing the entire crowd. "You wanted to know how to defeat a human. You thought you could learn our weaknesses and use them against us." He gestured to the injured cadets, being treated by medical staff. "But here's what you need to understand. We don't have any weaknesses that matter. We're not the fastest, so we became persistent, chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We're not the strongest, so we built weapons that multiply our force 1,000-fold. We're not the most armored, so we learned to strike first, strike hard, and never give our enemies a second chance." His voice dropped, becoming almost conversational, which somehow made it more menacing. "Humans survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other. We turned a death world into a garden. We split the atom. We touched our moon and looked at distant stars, and decided we'd go there too. We don't quit. We don't surrender. We don't know how." The doors at the far end of the hall opened, and Commander Jekrel limped back in, his arm in a regeneration cast that would take weeks to fully heal. The hall fell silent again. He looked at the human for a long moment, his compound eyes unreadable. Then, slowly, he bowed, a gesture of respect his species reserved for acknowledged superiors. "I apologize," he said, his voice raspy with pain and humility. "I taught my students how to defeat humans, but I was teaching them how to fight prey." He straightened, meeting the human's gaze as much as his alien neurology allowed. "You are not prey. You never were. You are apex predators who learn to hide it so well that even you sometimes forget." The human nodded slowly. "We remember when we need to." The final lesson sank in as the cadets watched their legendary instructor, the undefeated champion, acknowledge defeat. The human turned to leave, then paused at the entrance. "You asked how to defeat us," he said over his shoulder. "Here's the truth. You can't. Not because we're invincible, we're not. But because we'll never stop adapting, never stop learning, never stop finding new ways to survive and win. You might beat one human, maybe even 1,000. But humanity, we've been losing battles and winning wars since we figured out how to throw rocks. We're very good at it." As he walked out, the cadets remained motionless, processing what they'd witnessed. In the observation deck, the commanders looked at each other with expressions their various species all shared. The universal face of those who realize they've made a terrible mistake. "The galaxy will never sleep easy knowing Earth exists," Admiral Koresh whispered. General Vexter could only nod. Below, the training hall that had been full of laughter and mockery now held only silence and fear. The lesson on how to defeat a human had been taught, but the answer wasn't what anyone expected. And in the shadows of the corridor beyond, the human allowed himself the smallest smile before his face returned to neutral calm. After all, it wouldn't do to let them see everything. Humans had learned long ago that the most dangerous predator is the one you never see coming until it's far too late. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.